Good afternoon. I'm Kelvin Red, and I want to welcome you to Leadership Matters. It is a double entendre because leadership matters, and there are leadership matters that we have to deal with. I've been very privileged that I travel around the country. I meet a lot of people, meet a lot of leaders, people who are doing great things. Many of them are in small towns, and I've said for a long time, I wish people could meet these individuals and see what great things that they're doing. Well, today, I'm bringing to you somebody that I have, as the young people say, mad respect for. Our guest today is Hall of Famer and baseball coach Bobby Howard. He is the head baseball coach now at St Anne-Pacelli in Columbus, Georgia, but he is best known for when he was the head baseball coach at Columbus High School in Columbus, Georgia, where he won 12 state titles. His teams also finished second in 7 state finals. He has over 1,000 wins, and he coached Hall of Famer Frank Thomas. So without further ado, I want to bring on Coach Bobby Howard. Coach, how you doing this afternoon?
Kelvin, I'm doing good. Appreciate you having me on.
I'm so glad that you're here. And what I like to do each week with our guests is we want to talk about leadership. We want to talk about self-awareness, but we want to frame it in the form of a biography. So I want to start off with you, if you will. Take us on the journey from of where you were born, what high school did you attend, and then we'll just take it from there.
Well, I'm a Columbus native and proud of it. And I went to Jordan High School. I was a 3-sport athlete there and lettered in all 3 sports 3 different years.
Wait a minute, hold on. So you lettered in all 3. Does that also mean that you got scholarship offers in all 3?
I did. You know, I was kind of small, but I did.
Wow. And I don't know too many guys who've actually done that, particularly in this day and age. Which sport?
Well, it's kind of a foreign concept, kids. You know, there's so much speciality and kids wanting to major in one sport. It had a lot to do with making me a better person and a better athlete, getting those transferable skills. And I still like for our kids to play as many sports as they can.
Which sport did you settle on in college?
Baseball. But, you know, I think I was maybe people tell me some of my high school coaches, like, you know, Coach B.R. Johnson, you know, he said he thought I was a better football player. But
really?
But I chose baseball. Yeah, that was the easy route.
What position? I'm curious. What position did you play in football?
I was a quarterback.
Oh, okay. Did that toughen you up and enhance your leadership skills?
Oh yeah, no doubt. I think it did. Yes, at least some of my former teammates said it did. Anyway, so
take us on the journey. You leave college, Columbus College here locally. What happens next?
Well, I thought I was going to get a chance to play professionally. I had some people talking to me, and I got invited to, but I was frustrated. And Frank Matthews was an ultra successful coach at Columbus High at that time, and asked me to help with his summer program. And I was reluctant to do it, but I did, and I did pretty well. He moved me up. He moved me back and forth. He had 2 teams, so I coached both of them.
Okay.
And once they went to the playoffs, because he was an area scout at that time during summer, part-time only, so he was never there. He was traveling all over the Southeast, you know, scouting for the Dodgers at that particular time. So I had a lot of autonomy. I screwed up a lot, learned a lot, but you know, I said, you know, I can do this. So you know, and that was it. And then after that, you know, he gave me a opportunity to help him. And I got a job at Columbus High as assistant, went from there to Jordan for 2 years. I wanted to coach in college. So I applied for a GA at Auburn under Paul Nix. And he really wanted me. I liked him. And I went over there because Coach Johnson had been a GA there about 4 years earlier. So he knew that philosophically that, you know, we would coincide, whatever. So, but they had a PE change, and you had to teach PE and then go to the baseball field in the afternoon. So anyway, they drug their feet, whatever. I can't remember, but I know that Coach Johnson came back and says, you know, I've talked to Dr. Savage. We can pay you the same amount of money if you just help us and be a substitute coach, teacher at Chattahoochee Valley. So I did that year and went back to Kendrick, got a head job for about 5 years. And then I went to Columbus, and I was at Columbus for 35 years, taught there 31, and had one break there in 1997. I went to Middle Georgia Junior College and was a head baseball coach there in Cochran, Georgia. And back then, they were nationally renowned as having a great junior college.
And you had some success there too.
Yeah, I did. We won our conference, and Robert Sapp, that left there, took a lot of our players to Georgia. He got the University of Georgia job, but he did help me. Him and David Perno, that later became the head coach and took a couple Georgia teams to Omaha, the World Series, helped me get some players in that summer. So, we were one game away from going to the World Series. We won our state. We got beaten in the regionals 2 out of 3 by Columbia State. So,
and it's
interesting. Then I came back to Columbus. I got recruited back because my assistant coach and best friend got cancer, and he couldn't be the coach. And he said, "You need to come back." And so they recruited me back, and I came back, and the rest is history.
Well, Coach, let me ask you now. Right now, we see this successful Bobby Howard, but in your early years, like you mentioned, you were 5 years at Kendrick. Any tough times during that time period, early years?
Not there. At Jordan now, we were 500. I think my first year at Jordan as a head coach, we were one game under 500, and the next year we were one game over 500. Matter of fact, the last year, I think our last game, something happened at Central, but we ended up our season beating Central to give us a one game over 500. And you know who the coach was? The coach was Wayne Trawick.
Oh, really?
I can't even remember. He was coaching baseball that year because I forgot who it was, left early or whatever. He didn't have a choice, but I love Wayne Trawick. But anyway, at Kendrick now, we had a winning season. I think we were 14-10, came in second in the region the next year. Then we won the region my last 2 years, which really helped me get the Columbus High job.
Now, you mentioned Coach Trawick coaching baseball. Didn't you coach football at one time?
I did. I coached football at Columbus. I was a head coach, and we had some real good years, and we had some that wasn't. But the thing is that first year we were 7-5. They had been to playoffs, and then I think we were 6-5, made the playoffs again, 5-5, and then we had a rash of injuries, and we lost. We went 0-10 that year, but we lost 12 straight. And
wow!
And then after that, though, we won 9 straight. So I kept the team together, and and I said after we won the region championship, and they hadn't won it since. So we were successful in football, and then I went back to baseball.
So Coach, tell me this: how do you move from baseball to football and still be? I mean, you were successful. What's the key there?
Well, you got to have good players first, but you got to have buy-in, and you got to have support from the administration. You got to have a good staff and get everybody on the same page. There's no real secret, but it's as well as I do. Your dad was a Hall of Fame coach, and I'm sure that your dad could have coached baseball, football, soccer, been a band director. It's all about leadership.
Well, he did love baseball. That was his first love.
He told me that. Yeah,
that is absolutely for sure. Other than that one stint when you left Columbus High, were you ever approached by colleges or universities in your 35 years? I imagine you were.
There were some junior colleges from here and there, but the college thing as far as baseball is concerned, you got to start out early and things like that. I had some people that nobody really offered me a job, to be honest with you, but I did have some people say, you need to apply here. I mean, I had some people from some schools said, you need to apply, but if you're not a major D1 Power 5, you got, a lot of times they'll start college coaches out on as a first year coach, teacher, so to speak.
Yes,
you're a D1, and then so you can't take the pay cut unless you're single and and not have a lot of ties. And that wasn't my case. And a lot of high school coaches, after about the 5 or 6 years, you get put in that one particular teaching slot and experience. You can't afford to.
Well, now, before we really get into the leadership questions that I want to ask you, because we had a great conversation last week and I was just literally blown away. One question I want to ask you, like right now in the sports world, particularly in college, we keep hearing so much about the transfer portal and how kids may sign with, college A, and after, 1 year, they're ready to bolt and go somewhere else. Do you think that'll trickle down into the high schools?
I think it already has. I think that a lot of times, that kids are moving here and there. You got specialized training facilities. You got one over at Montgomery with the next level, and you got the elite one, of course, at IMG down in Bradenton. Yeah, so those kids are looking. I had one to leave me at Columbus. I was drafted. He got drafted down there. So he was a great player for us and could have been better, but he left his senior year, trying to get the best coaching, the best exposure and things like this. But there's a lot of transferring going on at the high school level too. And a lot of times the parents, it's like last year, a kid from California transferred into Valdosta to play football. And of course, and then they ruled him in eligible. And then he goes up, to Grayson or somewhere. I can't remember where he went, but he went up north. And so.
Well, that's, no offense to anybody, but I can't imagine somebody leaving your program to get more exposure. That's and better coaching.
Yeah, well, the parents sometimes, like we talked about, vicariously, they live in their lives through their kids sometimes, and of course, and sometimes, the program is not, what it should be. So that's on the coaches, and the administration for not putting a better product out there. So sometimes you can't blame them. And we've had some kids come in here because more of our academics than the athletics.
Well, now I'm a huge believer that success leaves clues. I mean, that's my mantra. You find somebody who is doing what you want to do, and you emulate them, and you're going to meet some level of success. How much, we don't know. Now, with you, you've won 12 state championships. You finished second 7 times in the finals. You put numerous players in college, guys who played pro. You coached a Hall of Famer. What is your secret sauce? Now, before you answer that question, I want to go a step further because you and I had a great conversation last week. I've asked my previous 2 guests, what is their secret sauce? However, in talking to you, reading about you, and following your career over the years, I know that you have a high degree of self-awareness and you understand yourself. But one of the things that really caught my attention last week was when you said you're a voracious reader and that you study leadership. And you said it on multiple occasions, whether it was last week or the previous time we talked. And to me, I think that's your secret sauce. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Well, I just always try to be a student in certain areas. I got a degree in history. I always loved history, but I would always study. And you stole one of my sayings all the time, that success always, leaves clues. I say that all the time to our kids. And but I read, and I'm just trying to be a student in all areas of not only baseball but athletics, and being able to study, how the Steve Kerrs, the Bill Belichick's, the Nick Sabans, the Coach K, what are they doing? The Tim Corbins at Vanderbilt. I've had a play up there, and I knew Tim when he was assistant at Clemson, and so we go way back. But I just remember the movie Patton. When he looks out there over the thing, and he said, that Rommel, I read your book, and I think that's kind of a thing that I've tried to do. Whether it be, like I said, whether it be hockey, baseball, whatever along those lines, and then being able to be a member of of baseball organizations and things like this. But I still get the football manual from Nike, because there's always motivation and discipline. I'm not getting into the X's and O's and things like that, but when they start talking about discipline and motivation, winning hoops, I'm still a member of that. So we got several professional organizations, baseball coaches, at the state level. We got a high school national organization that I'm a member, and of course the largest one is the American Baseball Coaches Association. So I've been a member of that for almost 40 years. So I got access to all the videos, all of the lectures, and I'm always sharing that with our players and our staff, and trying to stay on the cutting edge. But it goes back to just having a student mindset, in all areas. And the ones that I really, really read on a daily basis is the Bible, anything related to the team dynamics. I'm not into biographies and things like that unless it's a coach. But I like seasons, because then you get into the inner dynamics of practice. What are they doing from a discipline standpoint? If somebody is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or whatever on that. How Pat Riley handles the press or whatever, the news media and things like this. And so just being, and I ran into him a couple of times, and I talked to him and, told him how much I enjoyed his books. And, and he gave me that second look like, who is this guy? But the whole point, I did it with Joe Madden one time. And
Okay.
so I think, though, just being inquisitive and having that passion to be the best you can, because I think you owe it to your staff, and you owe it to your players, and you owe it to the program.
See, and I can't underscore that enough, just from, the fact of who I grew up around. But at the same time, I study leaders a great deal. I mean, I got a bookshelf behind me. I've read every one of these books. And I see a lot of leaders, coaches, emerging leaders. It's almost like they don't study leadership enough. They study the game, but they don't study, what makes people tick and why they do what they do. And that, when you're on the field and the light's shining and the band's playing, you're feeling good. But when you're down, a couple of runs and it's the bottom of the ninth, I don't see people studying that a lot.
Well, it just goes back to, it's a relationship business. You're dealing with people, and I tell our coaches and other people when I talk that, we're not coaching young baseball players. We're coaching young men that happen to play baseball. So there's so many decisions and, and the relationships and how you can teach them to be a future or an older, they're going to be, of course, if you're coaching women, they're going to be moms and dads. So you got to make sure that you're preparing them and giving them lifelong skills, because the baseball and the athletics is such a small part of our life.
Well, let's talk about building a team. Now, some people could easily say, okay, he's in Columbus, Georgia. He's at a private school. He was at a magnet school, and players are going there to play. But my attitude has always been, if I've got a child and they're playing at your school, at my school, and the school is not winning, I want to go where my child can learn and to play under somebody where they can grow. What does it take to build a winning team? When we talked last week, the first word that came out of your mouth was character.
Yeah, that's true. I think, though, it goes a little bit, before you get into character, I think you got to have the school right first.
Yes.
Because you can have the best facilities and things like that, but if they're not getting a quality education, you're not being real and not being authentic and trying to recruit them. Because you got to make sure that the education part or education piece is going to help them further down the road when baseball is not. You can only wear a baseball uniform for just X amount of years. And you got to get school right. And that ties into, we tell our kids, if you're the right person and the right student, the athlete will flourish. Now, if you don't have them first two right, it doesn't matter, because you're going, whatever the platform and the higher you go, as far as the pressure goes, they'll crack eventually. They won't.
You let's pause there. You said last week what I thought was really interesting. You said once you get to about the third or the fourth round, the pretenders and the counterfeiters, they tend to disappear at that point.
Yeah, they're not around anymore. Everybody, and it's just, I think Art Williams says, you can beat everybody, if you're a person of character, then 50%, then the other 25 or 30%, about the other 25%, you can just be super competitive. Now the other 10 or 15%, it's a dog fight, So hey, and that's where that's what happens when Alabama plays Clemson, or Duke plays North Carolina, in baseball, that Texas plays Vanderbilt, or vice, what I'm saying, along those lines. Yeah.
Well, now let's talk about the fact that when we talk about building a team, playing a tough schedule, because you said you refuse to be average. And one of the things that I really loathe are coaches who I call stat stuffers. They'll play anybody and they'll play subpar talent, and it doesn't benefit the kids at all. And it shows up once it's playoff time. What was your philosophy behind playing a tough schedule throughout the season to get your players ready for the postseason?
Well, we just knew that who we had to beat. We could go down, we were successful, and we knew that there were certain programs, and I didn't worry about teams. When I said that if somebody had a good team, I was more concerned about people that had outstanding programs.
Yes.
I knew that Marist and Parkview, and Loganville, and maybe Beaufort, those are the people you got to beat.
Yeah.
So it doesn't do you any good to go out, like you said, and get a great resume, a great winning record. Because when you line up with those guys, those guys, number one, their staff knows what they're doing, and their players are outstanding. They're excellent. So it's a dogfight, and so you got to prepare your kids for those things. I remember Adolph Rupp said it one time along the lines. He says that we got a bunch of country fiddling basketball players, but we have to play a Carnegie Hall schedule here.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, talk about the fundamentals, because you talk about how baby steps count and how important baby steps are.
Well, I think you base success on performance. You want to lose, but you got to base it on improvement too. And I think that a lot of time coaches can maybe get too caught up in their wins and losses. But if you keep getting better, and the baby steps and the inconsistency is better than not doing it at all. And you got to be able to not only measure those, but baseball is just really taken off with analytics and all these measurements as far as launch angle, spin rates, exit velos and things like this, or radar signs. You got radar guns and things like that. And I try to stay involved in that too, because my son's a scout. He's a professional baseball scout. So I'm on the cutting edge of that. But I think, though, that we tend to, forget about the development and the improvement aspect of the game. If you're going to be relational, you may not be able to outspin, out recruit, but you can out coach, or you can out develop, you can out improve, some of your aspects out. You can out relational, as far as that. Get to know your players and showing them that you care about them more or just more important as a person than a player.
Well, do you consider yourself more of a teacher than a coach?
Yes, I think there's no doubt. I thought, all the coaches that I've studied, from John Wooden, like I said, Coach K, and everybody in Belichick, they say that, they're great teachers, and they take pride in that, and a lot of times, when you become the head coach, you lose that aspect, but most of them still go back and they'll jump in a drill and, stop practice, say, wait a minute, that's not the way it's done. They got hands on, and those guys were great teachers. I think Coach Wooden was an outstanding teacher, before he ever became a coach. So, but yeah, teaching is, and I say it all the time, I used to get into it with our administrators that, it's one of the highest forms of teaching. You get graded every Friday night, or you get graded 2 or 3 times a week. When news media, it's in newspapers. Of course, newspapers is just about a foreign concept now, but, through social media, through Twitter and whatever along those lines, where the regular teacher doesn't. I mean, they put the grades up there and it's easy for them to fail. But in athletics, when the team or the kids fail, the coach fails.
Yes.
And I think the teacher and the good teachers see that. When a student fails, they feel like they fail too, but some of them are not. And coaches can be manipulative like that too, and are transactional and trying to use the kids to get to another level or whatever. But the real good ones, and the ones that have sustained success, not just up and down or whatever along those lines, but keep it, like Saban and Coach K, that win year in and year out. That is so much harder to do,
So the ball field is your classroom. I've got
That's no question.
Yes. I've got a book behind me by Dean Smith, and one of the things he talked about was that when he was coaching, he did not like to be disturbed at practice.
Right.
Like, that was his classroom, and
no question.
You would walk into the science department and interrupt a professor.
Right. It's their laboratory, like mine. It's my laboratory, classroom, whatever you want to phrase it. Yes.
Well, what is your vision for your program? I mean, I know you have a baseball philosophy, but does your vision for the program change each year? If not, what is that vision that you have for your program?
Well, I think, John Maxwell started it off with the process, and I think Saban just kind of copied that. But, and everybody talks about the process, but, I tell our kids that, and they know what the process is, and they know how to define it. It says, it's those 4 to 5 things that we do daily, every day, that guarantees our ongoing success. And when we really teach those fundamentals, and and it's kind of like a play. I mean, there's certain things that are not going to go according to plan during practice, and you got to adjust them. And we got our roles, we got to know our lines. But once those things, we go over them, and once they're going to come up in a game,
right?
But you just don't know when they're going to come up in a game. So you just try to get those 4 or 5 things, on a daily basis, and not trying to be too spiritual biblical, but Luke 2:52 is one of my favorite verses, and it says that Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, and in favor of God and men. So and our kids know that. We got a big poster there. I've had it forever. Is that you got to grow in wisdom. To get better, you got to get smarter. There's no smart players rarely do dumb things. So and you got to be intelligent, because the world keeps changing and the competition keeps getting better. And so you got to get smarter. Then the physical aspect or the stature is you got to be strong. You want to be able to play baseball at the next level. People right now in college are throwing, 88 to 92. The good ones on Friday night are throwing 94, 95. You got to turn that around. You better have some hand strength, and you got to be strong to get the bat and turn around a 90-mile-an-hour fastball that gets to you in 0.4 seconds. You got to be able to do that. And then the other one is in favor of God and men. You got to have a spiritual base that your basically ethical compass doesn't meander back and forth. Or, you got to have something to have a foundation in there to say, I need to do this. I don't need to do this, whatever. So along those lines, before you say yes, before you say no, what is your guiding ethical compass? And the other one is in favor of men. You got to be relational. Nobody wants a teammate that's a jerk. Nobody wants a coach that's a jerk. Nobody wants to work with one. And so you got to get along with people. And the way you do that, I tell them all the time, you got to be friendly. You got to smile. You got to be empathetic. You got to put yourself in their shoes. You got to be real. You can't be, kids can spot a phony immediately.
Yes.
You can, I tell our coaches, you can con a con and you can fool a fool, but you can't ever fool your players. They know. And then last thing is you got to be relevant. I don't care if you play in the big leagues. I don't care if you're a Hall of Famer. How can you make me better? Do you care about me as a person, and how can you make me better?
Well, speaking of that foundation, you mentioned your coaches. How important is to have good assistants, number one? And were you like I read about Bear Bryant in the sense that you coach your coaches, or do you coach your players, or both?
You got to do both. But I think that you got to give them the autonomy to coach the players, and you supervise it. But you coach if you're really in a better situation, and you got the program where you want it. The coaches, with their expertise can go ahead and teach the game, and you coach them, and then you give them autonomy to screw up or whatever, and that's going to happen, because I did it when I was young. Well, I didn't just wake up one day and become an outstanding coach. It took years, a lot of trial and error and things like this, and I screwed up and failed left and right, and they're going to do it. But the whole point is to answer your question. It's a little both, but I think the better off you are and the more established the program is, that you let the coaches coach, and that's the reason you have coaches meeting beforehand and afterwards and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. And every practice is like every game takes on a different personality, but you got to adjust. You go out there and say, well, I wonder what the boys have got for us today, guys. But you go out there and see, and then you adjust along those lines.
Coach, how much time do you spend on practice preparation?
Well, I used to spend a lot. I think now that our practice format is, there was a basketball coach at St. Joe's, Phil Cavaletti, I think was his name, or something
Martelli.
Thank you. Yeah, he said that. He said, his theory was, and I heard him speak live because I wanted to go to a basketball thing, and he said that if the players know how to practice, the coaches just supervise, along those lines, and make sure they're in detail. And I remember when Jimmy Johnson and went to the Super Bowl the first time they played Buffalo with a no huddle, and he said, we've been over it all year. We just had, two different teams. We go from one hash mark to the other, boom, 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 and just trying to make the practice tougher than the games. That was one of Bobby Knight's things. And so, but our kids can practice now by themselves. We can call out a drill and they know what to do. So I don't do as much as I used to. I used to religiously, but not so much now. And then I let our coaches run the practice. But, they coach the games. I'm just, we try to practice. We had T-shirts made up when I first got here. We've had it all along philosophically, but you practice perfect. Try to. And then you compete for fun. But the, you got to be able to relax because the game is so hard. The game is hard. I mean, it's a game of failure. So we try to, I don't try to give them too much information. That's one thing I get on our coaches about. I said, look, you don't forget how hard it is. Don't forget. And parents are saying they're the worst. They're up there trying to give them, step by step, pitch. You need to do this. You need to do that. Of course, and I don't allow ours to do that because it's too hard. And most of the time they didn't play.
I think I grew up hearing my daddy talking about keeping things simple, because he would say that you go down to the recreation center and the kids are just running up and down the floor. He goes, why would you bring them to practice and confuse them with a lot of plays?
No question. I agree 110, 100%. That is so true. And, and that's the reason that baseball a lot of times specialize, and you go to, they don't know how to play that. They're bigger, faster, stronger. They throw harder and they hit the ball further, but they don't have the instincts on, like you said, how to play.
Yes.
And that's the reason that the Dominicans, they don't have parents involved. They just go play all day like we used to.
Right.
And parents would tell them to come home. They would never go. We got as many people that practice that we used to have 20 years ago at games.
Yeah.
Just trying to be helicopter, so to speak, over their kids, not letting them be young adults making decisions on their own. They think they got to be there.
Well, let me ask you a question along those lines. Are kids today different than what they were, 25, 30 years ago, 40 years ago? Are they different?
Well, I'm going to go, all kids are born good first, okay? But the world around them has changed dramatically. There's no question about that. I mean, you just looked at the breakdown of the home. Yeah. 50% divorce. Not many males are involved in the raising of the kids as compared to when we were there. And the explosion of the internet. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of material they can pull up that they're not really mature enough to handle.
Well, pause right there. I'm curious. Is it more challenging to lead them during this social media age right now than what it was back in the day?
I think no question. But I think that's just one aspect. Yeah, I do. There's a lot of information out there, and just about as much information, there's a lot of misinformation too. But but they don't have the resume or the background that a lot of the coaches do. So there's not as much trust with the coaches now as because you say, well, hey, I'll pull this up, and maybe Derek Jeter was talking about hitting, and maybe he was, and but they don't probably understand what he was talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I did hear one coach say that it was very important for coaches to be able to teach the game, because a lot of youth don't understand the game, regardless of the sport.
No question. Well, I tell our guys all the time, I say, you got to train for the sport. You got to play the sport. But the last thing is what we were alluding to. You got to study the game or study the sport. And that's what they don't do.
Yes.
I can talk. Some of our guys don't even watch college baseball. They don't even watch a game on TV. They got their phones in front of them. They're doing this. They're playing whatever, TikTok, Fortnite, whatever, along those lines. And then they come to the baseball field and want to know, why they didn't, do this and that. And I said, well, you ever watched a game? Well, no, I don't watch baseball on TV. I don't watch it. I don't go to the park and watch it. I don't go play it except, in a practice center.
Yeah.
And that's the reason there's, Dominicans are really, really taking over the baseball world.
Well, Coach, a couple of questions before we adjourn here. We see the smiling, happy Bobby Howard right now, but how do you handle adversity? How do you handle a loss? Season-ending loss.
Yeah, I think the main thing is you try to do your practices and you do your games, and the compliment that I've gotten over the years, and sometimes they don't know the inner emotions that go through it, because I try to keep it inside. But they shouldn't be able to tell whether you won or lost. Is really, and
Okay.
it's what we try to preach. Regardless of the platform, regardless of how high and how low it is along those lines, Coach. We just try to keep that emotional balance in there when we win, and because we're going to lose. It's just like you were alluding to Dean Smith. He said, if every game was life and death, there'd be a lot of dead people laying around. Because every coach, talks about my wins, but they don't talk about my losses.
Yes.
So they talk about the state championships, but they don't talk about how, we blew it here, we blew it there, along those lines. So, but to answer your question, I think though, you shouldn't be able to tell whether a team or a coach won or lost.
Well, two final questions, Coach. I mean, it seems like you've done it all, and
Well,
you're still
I
going.
I promise
Well,
you. I'm
you're
still
still
trying
going
to learn.
strong.
Yes.
You're still going strong. What do you have to improve upon?
I think that, there's so many aspects there. I mean, that's an open-ended question because I feel so behind sometimes at my age, and things like this. I get jokes all the time, when I go to clinics and conventions because I can just remember that Skip Berkman, who was a longtime coach at LSU, won a bunch of national championships and became the AD. And he was so good at baseball. He hired Saban and all this. And he was telling the story. I was happened to be on a podium with him, and he was telling the story of John Wooden. John Wooden spoke and went outside, and everybody wanted his autographs. So he said, I ain't got but another minute. I got to hear this next speaker. And Berkman said, he said, man, who is this next speaker? And he looked down, it was a high school coach. And he went in there, and John Wooden was on the front row taking notes to a high school. So, if John Wooden can do that, I got to make sure that, I'm going to continuously stay a student. And there's so many things in technology, and baseball has really changed as far as, the terminology and the clarification of terms and things like that. So I'm just trying to stay on the cutting edge. Like I said earlier, the main thing is that the world and technology keeps changing and the competitors keep getting better. So.
Well, Coach, I said I had one last question. Actually, it's a two-parter, and that is, do you put in long hours?
I do. We practice a long time, and we try to make sure we over-prepare and practice. And I think I alluded to this last time we talked, but if you put everything together with the facilities, athletes, and coaching staff, the biggest two differences, is the way coaches prepare and the way they practice. Because that's where you teach. Like I said, that's their classroom, that's their laboratory. And if you can get those two things right, you're way ahead of the game.
Well, Coach, what does the last question? What does the off season look like for you? Do you have an outlet? I mean, what are you doing now?
Well, I just went and swam a mile before I got here, so it wasn't very fast, but it was consecutive. So I try to make sure I don't have any hobbies. I don't fish. I don't play golf. I don't hunt. So I try to work out. So I got a nice bike, and I'll go ride. I tried to ride it yesterday, and I got caught in the rain. But like I told you, I've done a triathlon, and sometimes 4 or 5. But I try to do one now at my age every summer. So just to maintain a certain level of fitness, I want to be able to bring energy, create energy on the field, and be engaged. And I still throw BP I can. So I want to stay engaged as long as I can.
Coach Bobby Howard, Hall of Fame Coach Bobby Howard. Look, you mean a lot to me. You mean a lot to
well, your dad and yourself. Y'all mean a lot to me, Kelvin. I mean, I tell you what, that was a quality coach, great person, probably a better person than a coach, and I loved him.
Well, I appreciate it. Y'all were inducted into the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame together. He thought the world of you. He loved your teams, and I really appreciate you coming on Leadership Matters and sharing with us your lessons in leadership and self-awareness, Coach. Thank you so much.
Kelvin, I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was Coach Bobby Howard, Hall of Fame Coach Bobby Howard, and I really appreciate him joining us on Leadership Matters. Our next guest in a couple of weeks will be Dr. Vicki Karlowicz. She is the president of Wallace State Community College in Hanceville, Alabama. This is Kelvin Red. As I sign off, as I always say, remember, define your destiny.